Good afternoon. Just another series of videos here, or another one of the series, I guess I should say. This one's going to be relatively simple. Looking at a delay line transducer, I'm going to calibrate just regular longitudinal beam on a flat plate, basically 0.1 to 0.5 inch step wedge that we have here. If you can't read that, this is a V20, if I could read it, 5, there we go. V205 transducer, which means that it's a 0.5 megahertz, 0.25 inch diameter, and then it gives me a serial number down there. But basically all you need to know about it is it's got a delay line down here. Okay, first things first, we're going to just apply a little bit of couplant to that delay line. Just a dab will do ya. Okay, put my delay line back on there, make sure I got good contact to get the air out. Screw that thing back on there, just like that. Okay, I'm going to plug my cable into my transmit receive side right there on my Epoch XT. Just to see what I'm looking at here, I'm going to just slide down to my buttons. Here's my step wedge that I'm using, 0.1 to 0.5. So looking at this, I'm just going to go to display. Okay, and that brings me to this right here, telling me 100 factory, all that good stuff. So where I need to go now is measure. Okay, so it's doing its thinking. I push measure. Well, maybe not. It didn't want to take me where I wanted to be. Wrong measure button. There we go. Measure over here. That takes me to the screen I want to see. So now, back to the buttons. I'm just looking here. I could do an actual calibrate on here. I could use my velocity. I could use 0. All these buttons are going to be good for actual calibration if I wanted to do quick calibrations like a thickness gauge type thing or something like that. Over here on the right, let me zoom in a little bit so you can kind of see what I'm looking at. My gates, typical gates, gate 1, gate 2. This peak memory, that means I could hold the signal that the highest signal if I wanted to. Typical range button to set my range. Angle if I were dealing with shear wave. Pulsar takes me to the pulsar menu to set my transducer to the scope. Receiver, same thing, takes me there so I can set my transducer to the scope. Saving buttons for file and so on and so forth. This display button is kind of cool because it will allow me to set my screen as either a full screen or a split screen. So I push the second button, hit the display button again, and I go there. This would be if I'm looking again for thickness gauge type stuff. I push the measurement setup button, takes me back here, and I could go through all of these different options if I wanted to. I don't really need to right now. Since I'm just going to do a quick calibration, a gate would be good enough for what I need. So I'm going to go back and push this measure button. Pushed it, brought me back to here. Rotate you around a little bit. I hate you being sideways. Okay, so back off just a little bit. Got my delay line here. If you're looking at my signals, I have just a repetition of signals. So I'm going to zoom you up just a little bit so you can see what I'm working at. I want to get my first things first, range down to 0.5 inches. So I'm just going to push the range button and take that thing down to 0.5 inches. So there I am. Okay? Next thing, I am dealing with steel. You can use aluminum or whatever material you want, but that's steel. So I'm going to take my velocity, push the velocity button, and raise that up to 0.23. And if you look right here, it says 0.232. So I'm going to slide this down a little bit. So this F1 will set my velocity up here at 0.232. Okay, so frequency of 15 megahertz, I said. Sorry, I said 5 earlier. This is actually 15. So I'm going to go to pulsar. That's going to take me to my frequency. If I push it, if I push the right button, if I push it several times, it's going to scroll through the pulsar menu. So I just want to roll this thing up to 15 megahertz, but 10's as high as this one's going to let me go for now, and that's okay. Let's see if I can get that to go a little higher there. I change my receiver. It's not wanting me to go any higher. Okay, so we'll just drive it at 10 megahertz right now and see what happens. So anyways, we are going to go back over here to our range button, which we're good. Range we've changed now because we changed our velocity, so we roll that back to 0.500 right there. The thing about this signal is this is going to be our delay line signal, so we got to get that out of the way because we've got our normal signal right here from the end of the transducer, but we got a delay line out there, so if I touch the end of that, you can see that signal starting to drop. So anyway, I'm going to go back to my zero offset because it was at 6.7 microseconds there, so we're going to take that back to 0 just so we can see our initial pulse. Now we already know that that was the end of our delay line on the other side, so if I touch it here, it's not going to make me any difference. Okay, so I'm going to take my 0 out now to where I see that first signal again. There it is. So I know that's the end of my delay line. Yep, right there. Okay, just looking at a couple other things. I'm still in pulse echo. I'm operating my filter at 5 megahertz to 15 megahertz, full wave rectify, and I don't have any thicknesses or anything set, but my gates here, first gate's at 1.2 inches, second gate's at 4.03 inches. So good enough for now. I'm going to continue to push my 0 out, so I get that as my initial pulse basically. I'm going to apply a little couplant down here on my block, okay, over on my 0.5 standard right there. Okay, I'm going to put my transducer on there, and I'm going to roll this back up again, and I'm looking for a signal that is popping up right at 100% basically, which it is. Okay, so I'm going to continue to push my 0 out here to where that comes up at 100%, which that's pretty good. I'm going to take my gain, increase that just a little bit, not a whole bunch, but it jumped a whole bunch. That's okay. I'm just wiggling my transducer back around here to try and get the best signal. That's why those things are jumping. But anyway, got a signal here, that's good. Okay, got a signal here, that's good. Looks like I'm seeing two separate things, which I'm looking at my 0.5 signal, which I want to make sure I'm good there, which I am. Okay, so there's my 0.5 signal right there. That's telling me that's the thickness of my back wall. So if I'm calibrated correctly, I should be able to, let me hit second split right there, blow that thing up. So I'm coming up right at 100% full screen width. If I go to my 0.4 thickness, I'm right at 80%. There's my 0.4 thickness. Okay, and then 0.3, right at 60%. 0.2, should see one at 40 and 80, which I do. And then 0.1, I should get some all the way across, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Now, just to get this a little bit more tuned in, I notice that I'm not quite on my 100% and I'm a little bit ahead there. So I'm going to take my delay, which I could use zero offset here, push these signals out just a little bit. Went the wrong way. Sometimes you got to play with the buttons here. They like to go opposite directions sometimes. So, but 20% there for my 1/10. Look out here at 5/10, I'm not quite there. So I'm going to take my range in this case and line that up. Okay, this is kind of lying to the instrument if you want to call it that. I'm going to line that guy up, but then I'm going to go back to my velocity and change my velocity to get that thing to roll right back to 0.5 inches. And there it is. And instead of being at 0.2300, I'm at 0.2349, and that's totally acceptable. There's nothing really bad about that. And just for kicks and grins, I'm going to bring my gate in so we can see it. There it is. And for fun, I'm just going to lower it down. It's showing me up here that I'm on flank, so it is going to read the first signal that it sees. So I want to go to gate 1. I'm there. I'm at 0.393, so that's where that is, 0.393. I'm going to go to level right here, so I'm going to push F3, and that's going to take me to my level. I'm going to lower that thing down, and just by messing around here, just in that quick calibration, I am at 0.41. Let me raise that up just a little bit where it's telling me my reading. So that's 410 thousandths basically. I could fine tune that a little bit more, but for what I got now, that's good enough. And I'm going to refine that signal by changing my range and delay, and actually where those signals are crossing the gate makes a big difference as well. So anyway, if you look over here, it's telling me percentage of the signal is about 50. It's coming right in at 0.41, and that's what it's telling me right here, 0.41. So simple calibration, pretty simple, I think. Shouldn't be too big of a difficulty. The biggest thing there is dependent on your thickness for your delay line, depends on the thickness of the material you can inspect. So if you have aluminum or titanium or a different material other than steel, it's going to take you a little bit of time to kind of get tuned in on that velocity, which if you go online, there's all kinds of different velocity charts that you could run into. Typical longitudinal velocity of steel is going to be 0.23 or 230,000 inches per second, and aluminum is going to be 0.25 or 250,000 inches per second. Anyway, hope that helps out a little bit. Just one last time through. There's my 0.1 thickness, 0.2 coming up at 40 and 80, a little past actually, 0.3, a little past 60, 0.4, a little past 80, and then there I'm a little past 100. So I'm really not that fine-tuned, so I'm just going to kick that thing back using my 0 just to bring that back. Apparently it didn't like where I was before. So there it is, 100, 80, 60, 40, and 20. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. And I'm paying attention to where that signal's breaking the baseline. So anyway, could get a little more fine-tuned than that if you wanted to. Just for a quick calibration, that tells me what I need to know within 10 thousandths or so, and that's not a problem at all. So anyway, if you're looking for 1 to 2 thousandths, it's going to take a little bit more fine-tuning, but if you're just getting in within 10 thousandths or so, that calibration right there is plenty good. So anyway, any questions on that, feel free to let me know. Thank you much.